To the Alaska Weather Show, I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on behalf of Alaska Public Media, our media partner that brings you this weather broadcast each day. And the day, Sunday, January 16th, we're already into the middle of January, and it's been an active weather period here, but things are actually quiet for a change. But if you do want additional weather information for anywhere in the country, you can go to weather.gov. And what will come up is a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii in the lower left there. And you just click on the map and it will take you to a specific location where you can get forecast, watches, warnings, advisories, and much more. So if you want to check up on friends and family anywhere in the country, you can do that. And looking at the headlines, well, no winter weather advisories, watches, or warnings are currently in effect across the state of Alaska. And that's quite amazing because we've had something going on pretty much since late fall, November, December, early January, all very busy. And we've had a number of storm systems. So enjoy the little break that we're getting. Also, temperatures are going to have a tendency to average above normal across much of the state here. We did have the tsunami threat yesterday and Saturday that terminated in the afternoon, but there was an actual measured wave of 3.3 feet there at King Cove, 1.7 feet at Yakutat, and 1.6 feet at Sand Point. Other areas along the western U.S. coast saw waves as high as 2 to 4 feet, and Hawaii, a couple of feet there, but no reports of any notable damage. That's certainly good news because that volcano was way in the South Pacific near Tonga, and I'll talk more about that. Some very impressive satellite imagery to show you in just a moment. Otherwise, tonight and into tomorrow, look for the full wolf moon of January, and as I mentioned, above normal temperatures and precipitation averaging a bit above normal are likely now through the end of this month. And here's the satellite image. On the left, kind of a rapid replay showing the Himawari satellite. That's the Japanese weather satellite, and that's a visible image and very impressive. You can see the top of that explosion. That's getting all the way up into the stratosphere, 20 feet above the ocean. And then on the right, we have an infrared image, kind of looking at a different, longer wavelength, and you can see the extent of this violent eruption. And you also can see, if you look at the left side, you can see the shock wave from the explosion rippling outward from the center of the blast. And of course, they did have tsunamis there near Tonga, and certainly some of the smaller islands. We're still waiting here just to what extent there was damage because communications have remained cut, and that's a very remote area of the South Pacific. But nevertheless, fortunately here in Alaska, we got away without nothing more than some waves around 1 to 3 feet. Well, looking across the Arctic coast up at Dead Horse, a cold afternoon. The cold air right now is residing along the Arctic coast to North Slope, where temperatures have been in the 30s below zero, 38 degrees shortly after 1 o'clock this afternoon. Further west, Kotzebue, seeing MVFR conditions, kind of some broken cloud cover, and a temperature of 1 above zero. As we go further off toward the south, over at Sand Point, some broken cloud cover, and temperatures there got a little above freezing, 34. And if you want temperatures above freezing, you pretty much have to go from Sand Point southwestward down along the Aleutian chain. And then out in the Panhandle, things there trying to break up. Cake, some areas of fog and broken cloud cover, and a temperature of 37. There's still some lingering lighter rain and snow showers across portions of the Panhandle, but a drier flow of air is going to develop. Offshore flow will give the Panhandle a break for early this week, especially on Monday and Tuesday. And then one other note, if you look upwards, if skies are clear in your location or you have some breaks in the cloud cover, you'll be able to see the full wolf moon of January. And technically its greatest illumination and full extent happens early Monday afternoon, so that would encompass tonight and tomorrow night. And looking at the satellite imagery, we still see cloud cover It started out there over the southern panhandle. The thicker cloud cover is peeling off to the east into British Columbia, and again, as a drier surface flow develops there, the panhandle will see more in the way of some breaks opening up here as we go into the day Monday and Tuesday. Across the north, we have some lingering areas of cloud, especially in the northwest interior, the west side of the Brooks Range, seeing some patchy light snow, and there's some areas of light fog and a little few flurries and even some pockets of freezing drizzle along the southwest coast, Dillingham on up toward coastal areas there of Nunavik Island. And then you can see rather extensive cloud tops there lifting northward through the Bering, and then another batch including some showers lifting up into the central Aleutians, and that's associated with a low pressure area. First occluded front lifts north and then just kind of washes out, followed by another trough. So showery weather will continue along the Aleutians here for early in the week. And as we look off toward the east, there is a weak area of high pressure over the Gulf and along the kind of the Gulf North Pacific interface, and then weak low pressure continues to work its way inland into British Columbia, far southern Yukon, and with it the bulk of the precipitation, and then still some lingering lighter snow and flurries overnight and into the day on Monday across especially northern northwest portions of the state, extending down toward the southwest, the lower Yukon Delta, and then a broad area of lighter snow out over the central and western portions of the Bering Sea. But we can see by Monday afternoon we're still going to have high pressure out there over the Gulf, though it be weak, stronger, a little stronger high out over northwest Canada, with weak low pressure along the Alaskan Arctic coast, and another high, a little stronger back out there across eastern Russia, and lagging a couple areas of low pressure and trough there through the Aleutians. And there'll be another low with a push of moisture moving up toward the panhandle, but that'll hold off until Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'll see another round of some snow changing to rain there, especially in the panhandle. And otherwise, we just expect some pockets of lighter snow or flurries continuing across portions of the mainland. So low temperatures Monday morning, generally 20s there in the panhandle, a little colder there across south central interior, back down below zero in some areas, and then daytime highs only in the teens, say Anchorage and Talkeetna, single digits in the interior, and readings upper 20s to near 30 along the south central coast, 30s there in the panhandle. And then Tuesday morning we're looking for lows generally below freezing across the panhandle, and colder lows single digits, teens along the south central just off of the coast, still holding up in the 20s to near 30 along Kodiak Island, and as you extend out through the Alaska Peninsula. And then for Tuesday afternoon, temperatures generally in the upper 20s north panhandle and the 30s, low mid 30s south panhandle, and temperatures generally in the teens across south central interior. Coldest air is going to reside along the north slope Arctic coast, 30s below zero there, Dead Horse, Katovik, and then daytime highs single digits above and below zero, though the Yukon Flats, an area up toward Arctic Village, will be 10, 15 below for highs, and then teens and 20s below, so not as cold as what we saw here earlier in the month or certainly back in December. And daytime highs on Tuesday afternoon will get back up in single digits above zero, especially the middle lower Yukon Valley. And for Monday morning lows, we'll see some minus sub-zero readings there and through the upper Kuskokwim and middle Yukon valleys, single digits elsewhere, and temperatures remain above freezing from the tip of the Alaska Peninsula through the Aleutians. Monday afternoon highs upper 30s to low 40s from around Sandpoint southwestward. Temperatures should get back up at least into the teens across the southwest interior. Lows Tuesday morning slipping back down into the single digits above or below zero across the southwest interior, those southwest coast including Bristol Bay, teens to near 20, and a bit warmer, 30s above freezing generally as you extend out across the Alaska Peninsula by Tuesday afternoon, with a high of 36 there at Kodiak, and readings 39 to say low 40s as you go out from Sandpoint westward. Quick check of the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, January 22nd through the 26th. Above to much above normal temperatures over the southern half of the state, and much of the state will see above normal temperatures. That trend will continue right up through the end of the month, though maybe not quite as strong of a signature as we get into the last week of January.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, let's take a look at your aviation weather, and if you do have a flight planned early this coming week, Monday into Tuesday, we'll continue to see high pressure centered out over eastern Russia, another area out over the Northwest Canada, there along the Canadian Arctic coast, and then weak low pressure along the Alaskan Arctic coast. And we'll see an area of weak high pressure also over the Gulf, with the other weather feature being an occluded front that'll weaken as it lifts northward into the Bering, and another occluded front as we get into Tuesday, also trying to lift across northward across the Aleutians. But we expect IFR conditions, the North Slope, Brooks Range in the north, as well as the Seward Peninsula Monday morning, extending out over much of the Bering from Nunavik Island southward through the Aleutian chain. And then for Monday afternoon, we do expect IFR conditions to continue there along the Brooks Range north of the Yukon River into the northwest coast, as well as down along the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, in through the central Bering. And on Tuesday morning, well, more IFR conditions anticipated there along the Brooks Range north of the Yukon River and up along the Arctic coast, but fairly widespread VFR conditions are expected across the southern interior and especially in through the Panhandle. A little break in the action Monday and Tuesday because of drier offshore flow. And then we'll continue to see Tuesday morning IFR conditions Kodiak Island out over the Alaska Peninsula into the central Bering and central Aleutians, and areas of IFR will creep northward up to Cook Inlet east side of the Kenai by Tuesday afternoon, as well as make some inroad up the Kuskokwim and lower Yukon basin, and still a few isolated pockets there along the Brooks Range as well as just off the northwest Arctic coast. So past conditions on Monday, Anativik will see IFR conditions, and that'll be the case at Adigan Pass. As we go further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill and the western arm of the Alaska Range will see VFR conditions throughout Monday. And as we round up through the central Alaska Range, we expect VFR conditions not just at Rainy but also Windy Pass. And as we go further east, VFR conditions will continue, though you could see a pocket of IFR conditions further south of Isabel in the morning there, south of the south entrance. And then Mentasta Pass, VFR conditions are expected Monday, as well as at Tenita, a little further south and west, and Portage Pass will also see VFR conditions on Monday. And as I mentioned, much of the Panhandle will enjoy VFR conditions. A break in the action. It's been rather stormy there past couple of weeks, and VFR conditions are expected across the Panhandle, including the north end at Chilkoot and White. And looking at freezing levels, the surface freezing level runs from the south end of the Panhandle across the northern Gulf, south then of Kodiak Island across the tip of the Alaska Peninsula to near St. Paul and out into the central Bering. Greatest threat for icing along a decaying occluded front boundary as it lifts northward and washes out will be there in the central Bering, 2,000 to 12,000 feet to the vicinity of St. Paul, and then between 5,000 and 15,000 feet there over the eastern Aleutians. And as we work our way through the upper level wind levels, 3,000 feet jet stream level, strongest upper level winds, not that impressive, but overall a broad area of 60, 70 knot west-southwest winds over the Alaska mainland, turning northwesterly across northwest Canada, British Columbia, and as high as 85 knots from the northwest there over the Panhandle. And then as we bring it down to mid-levels, 9,000 feet, we have winds nothing especially noteworthy. The interior along the Yukon River up toward the Arctic coast, 35 to 40 knots from the southwest, with a weak low circulation there along the northwest coast at 9,000 feet. And then bringing it down further, 3,000 foot level, strongest winds are out over the western Bering out of the northeast and east at 50 to 60 knots. We do see some southerly winds coming across the eastern Aleutians, tip of the Alaska Peninsula to 35 knots. And this translates to the potential for some turbulence, mainly from the tip of the Alaska Peninsula across the eastern Aleutians, as well as out toward the western of the Aleutians there at Shimia, between surface and 3,000 feet. So compared to what we've seen in the past week or so, much more, let's just say, not as active of weather as in the past, especially here at the turn of the new year. So if you are planning a flight, check the latest conditions and forecast. And if you do manage to get out, have a safe flight.
Welcome Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
And we love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt. Sure. So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
That sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture, and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going off.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. it's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and talking about sea ice edge, we continue to see offshore flow off the mainland, mainly from the north and east, and this is causing the ice to continue to push toward the south and west, and this will be the case through this early coming week. Otherwise, no significant changes on tap. The air masses are not going to be especially cold, certainly not as cold as what we saw early in the month or back in December and November. Overall, though, ice is extensive across the Arctic Ocean, Chukchi Sea down through the Bering Strait and much of the northern and at least eastern portion of the Bering Sea along the Alaskan west and southwest coast. Also some ice there in through Cook Inlet, but otherwise, again, we mentioned that this is one of the better buildups of ice we've seen in several years since 2012. And looking at the marine forecast for the Panhandle, we're going to see more of an offshore flow there through the inner channels out of the northwest at 15 to as high as 25 knots through Lynn Canal, where waves could be as high as 4 or 5 feet. Otherwise, on the outer coast, north-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 7 to 9 feet, but more variable from around Yakutat westward, variable around 10 knots, waves 6 feet. And then on Tuesday, winds across the inner canals will be out of the north-northeast, 10 to 15 knots, waves 2, maybe 3 feet. Otherwise, on the Gulf outer coast, southeasterly winds around 15 knots, waves generally near 6 feet. And for Monday, across the northwest Gulf, winds rather variable around 10 knots or so, waves a couple of feet in Prince William Sound, maybe 5 feet off the Kenai Peninsula. And north-northeast 15 knots, 4-foot waves, the lower portion of Cook Inlet. By Tuesday, north-northeast winds will increase to 25 to 30 knots there through the mouth of Cook Inlet, with waves building to 7 to 9 feet. And across the northwest Gulf, east winds picking up to near 20 to 25 knots from off the Kenai to just northeast of Kodiak, and waves 5 to 7 feet. For Kodiak Island on Monday, winds will be variable around 10 to 15 knots, but more southeasterly on the Pacific side there of the Alaska Peninsula, waves 8 to 11 feet, and winds southeasterly to 30 knots there just north of Cold Bay, with waves of 6 feet. And across the region on Tuesday, winds will generally be out of the east there in the vicinity of Kodiak Island at 25 knots, and then southeast to east around 20 knots along the length of the Alaska Peninsula, either on the Bering or the Pacific side, and waves on the Pacific side there 9 to 10 feet, 5 feet there just on the Bering side. And looking at the Aleutian chain, winds on Monday will be out of the southeast and south through the eastern and central Aleutians, around 25 knots or so, and waves 12 to 15 feet on the North Pacific side, 8 to 10 feet on the Bering side, picking up to 35 knots around and west of Kiska, with waves there of 18 feet. Tuesday, winds will generally be out of the east 20 knots through the eastern half of the Aleutians, picking up to 30 knots around Atka and Adak, and then 40 to 45 knots west of Adak through the western Aleutians, with waves building 17 to 20 feet west of Adak. And across the west coast, the ice in place, winds continue out of the north-northeast. Out over the ice around 25 to 30 knots, and waves in the vicinity of St. Paul and St. George up to 10 feet. And then on Tuesday, winds will continue out of the north-northeast, generally around 25 knots or so, out over the ice there west of the west coast, north of Nunavik Island and south of St. Lawrence. Northeast winds to 40 knots there in the vicinity of St. Matthew, and easterly 20 knots St. Paul and St. George. And across the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the east-southeast around 15 to 20 knots, turning more northerly once you get around Utqiagvik and down into the Chukchi Sea, accelerating to 30 knots through the Bering Strait. And then on Tuesday, winds will be from the southwest west along the Arctic coast, especially from Prudhoe Bay through Kaktovik, and then northwest to north along the northwest coast, 15 to 20 knots, increasing to 30 knots on the north side of St. Lawrence. And a quick check of the weather maps overnight. Weak high pressure over the Gulf. Low pressure continues to press inland into western Canada. Low pressure south of the Aleutian chain, and a weak trough lingers through the southwest into the north central interior, producing some areas of light snow. And then on Tuesday, we do expect to have a stalled out frontal boundary with patchy light snow or flurries continuing in the inland, and low pressure there, especially just through the western portion of the Aleutians. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.